Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's special Valentine's Day edition of the Open Forum. We're going to talk about investment properties today, Investing 101, we're going to call it. If you already know all about investment properties, you can probably go now. If you would like to learn a little bit more, please interact, please ask questions, please answer questions I'm going to be asking. I will warn you, there is math involved in investment properties. In fact, that's mostly what it is. Real estate knowledge combined with math. And so we're going to go over this stuff, and please guys have your phones ready with your calculator, or have your calculator ready. And we'll get started. You have any questions before we get started? All right. I will not be able to see you all during the presentation. So please ask any questions that you might have. All right, Investing 101. Let's talk about this. So guys, as you're going through your life as a realtor, everywhere you go, and the idea of this presentation is that everywhere you go and everyone you talk to, when you tell them you're a realtor or that you're involved in real estate, they ask you a question. Oh, I'm an investor, right? Anybody who's ever invested in anything tells you they're an investor. And how many of you guys, show of hands, those of you I can see on the screen, how many of you guys have ever had your time wasted by someone who said that they were an investor and had no plan and no money, no action? Anybody ever put a bunch of properties together for somebody who wasted your time? Anybody done that? Yeah. This is kind of an idea, guys. This is going to help you weed out those of them that are time wasters. I was going to say tire kickers and time wasters, and help you narrow down. And the ones who are real, or they have potential to be real investors, there is absolutely a call to work with people who have not invested before, but to get on the right track and kind of weed out the wheat from the chaff, as they say, the time wasters from the actual investors. And so this knowledge is going to help you do that. The investor questionnaire should help you do that. If you guys send those investor questionnaires out, I know you don't want to lose the opportunity, but you do have to realize sometimes people are wasting your time. And so get involved with the questionnaire, get the questionnaire out. I will warn you that some people will ignore it and not respond to it. Go over it with them, and don't just send it to them and give them homework, but go over it with them. And we'll get to that later. We'll go over the questionnaire when we're finished with this. So let's talk about this, guys, how these actually work, how what is your worth in this process? Besides, I mean, anybody can set them up an internet search, right? And they don't, and how many of them say, oh, I don't want properties that are already on the market? That's because they already have some realtor sending them stuff, right? They're getting some kind of auto search already, or they're looking on Zillow. So you need to know the good ones from the bad ones. How many of you guys have ever had a client who wants to sell an investment property, something they're renting, and you tell them how much it's worth and they want 100,000 more? Anybody ever do that? 100,000 more, way more than it's worth? How many of you guys have ever had a client who asks you, or a potential investor who says, ooh, this is listed for $599. You think they'll take 500? Without even figuring out what it's worth, without even investigating what it's worth, right? They want to steal it without even knowing what it's worth. It might still be a ripoff. It might still be too much, right? Because the person's like, you have to be able to, your value is in evaluating and saying, you know what, even if you could get for 500, it's too much. Or you say, wow, if we could get it for 500, we'd be way underpaying, because I think 575 is a good price, whatever it is, right? So let's go over the numbers and let's go over this. Investing 101. What we will cover: terms you need to know, how to determine the value of an investment property, rates of return for cash and leverage properties. Most of your quote unquote investors who are interested in stuff are going to want to know, I mean, what is an investor? What is, let's say you're at a restaurant tonight and you're single and you're just lonely at a restaurant, and someone asks you what you do for a living. You tell them you're a realtor, etc., right? What do they really want to know when they say, boy, I really wanted to get into real estate investing? They really want to know, they're sitting on some stack of money, whether it be a small stack or a large stack of money, and they want to know what they can get back for it, right? They want to know, if I have $100,000 cash, what's my best, what can I do with real estate? Why is real estate a good investment? They probably already talked about it or read about it or something, and they think real estate's a good investment. But what they really want to know is, how much can I make on my money, right? They want to turn a small stack into a big stack, or a big stack into a bigger stack, right? That's the whole point of investing. But what they're really interested in is the cash on cash return, which we'll get to later. How to determine the best way to buy an investment. And that's talking about cash or leverage properties and how to determine that. Commercial investments and the effect on end users. I don't know how much we're going to get into commercial today. We'll probably save that for another day. Why invest in real estate? With so many options, why do people invest in real estate? Volatility or lack thereof in real estate as opposed to the stock market. So guys, in a macroeconomic sense, this is a macroeconomic type question. They have, let's say they have $100,000, right? Are they better off putting it in the market? Are they buying bonds, which are low yield and low risk, right? Low risk, low reward, as we would say in real estate. Low risk, low reward would be like a bond, right? Pays you 3.5%, but it's a definite thing that's going to come through. Or you do something, real estate's a little bit more, but the stock market is just, you can buy junk stocks, right? Which you can put as much as you in. You can buy Bitcoin. You can do all kinds of stuff. Very volatile, some of it, and some of it is not volatile at all. Very risk averse, like bonds. So which is better? It all depends on what the person's goal is. Younger people obviously can take on more risk than older people who have less time to recover if something goes poorly. Appreciation. Do they like the appreciation of real estate? Do they like the intrinsic value that it'll always be worth something? You buy stock in Enron, it's not always going to be worth something. But if you buy a piece of land, it's always going to be worth something, right? Land with a house on it, even if the house gets blown down, you're still going to be worth something. Status. They like to say they're investors, don't they? They love to say they're investors. They have, 4 properties that I rent out, et cetera, right? Capitalization rates. Okay, now this is a straight return. We're going to talk about this. I think some of these things are, okay. Cap rate, the rate of return on an investment property based on the income that the property is expected to generate. That's your cap rate. So it is calculated by dividing the investment's net operating income by the current market value. So if I rent out a house for $1,000 a month, I try to do things I can do the math on. $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 per year. It's on an annual basis like that, $12,000 per year. But let's say I have in ordinary repairs and reserves for a roof and this and that, right? I save $2,000 toward that stuff, or save or spend $2,000 toward that stuff every year. So I make $10,000, right? Remember, we went from 12, we spend 2,000, 10,000. What if I buy that property for $100,000? What is the cap rate? I buy it for 100 and it makes me 10 every year. That's very simple math, guys. What's that? What's my cap rate? Somebody give me some fingers or something. There you go. Thanks, John. 10. Tom, 10. Love it. I'm glad I did it where you could do it with your fingers. No toes on here. All right. So that's 10, right? That's a very basic one, but you guys get the idea. The capitalization rate is the rate of return. Do not, guys, learn these acronyms. Rate of return, the lingo. Return on investment is one you hear a lot. People say, "Oh, that's your return on investment." No, it's not. That's your rate of return. That is your rate of return. Your return on investment is when that takes into account appreciation, takes into account everything, right? Because that's what you actually get on the, in this case, the $100,000 that you bought this for. Well, if you sell it 5 years from now for $175,000 and all the money, the $10,000 that you made every year, your return on investment is much higher than your rate of return, right? Because you got appreciation, you got tax write-offs, you got all this stuff, right? So that's that. All right, let's go. Next, net operating income. How do we get that net operating income number? All revenue from the property minus all reasonably necessary operating expenses. Okay, reasonably necessary operating expenses is your net operating income. Do not let a client, we'll talk about debt service in a second. Do not let a client tell you you know, but my son's going to live here and he wants, you know, he wants whatever he wants in the house or whatever it is. That's not reasonable. I mean, that is beyond the ordinary. When you're finding out if it's a good investment, you don't take into account special things. We're talking about arm's length transactions with regular operating, like putting tenants in it. Does not, but if your son's one of the tenants, you're going to give him free rent, then you can't say, well, it only brings in $600 a month. Well, that's not how that works. Okay, does not include debt service. Debt service is principal and interest paid toward a mortgage or note. So that's when people leverage the property. We'll get into in a second. So net operating income does not count, you know, oh, I'm going to have a loan on it and I got to pay that too. That doesn't count. That's not everyone who buys it is going to have a loan on it, guys. This is like a regular cash. We're doing it like it's cash when we figure the numbers, which we'll get into in a second. Leverage, the use of borrowed money for investment purposes with the expectation that returns will increase. So your person that you met at the restaurant says they have $100,000 cash. Does that mean they're limited to a $100,000 property? Of course not, right? They can leverage. They can usually 25, 30% down on investment property, sometimes as little as 20, and they can leverage that. You guys, if you guys were here a couple of weeks ago, we had Tom was here talking about was that last week? DSCR, debt service coverage ratio loans. Okay. That they don't even check your credit. They don't care about anything as long as you put 25% down and the rent covers the note, covers what you owe them every month. Okay. Really cool. Or you can just have really good credit and it doesn't have to cover it. And you can put your kid in there, right? Leverage creates some risk, but also alleviates some risk as it allows the investor to diversify. Why does leverage create risk? Because they can call a note, because you got to make a payment every month or they take it from you, right? If you own something cash, obviously nobody can take it from you. You just won't be making a return if it sits empty for 6 months. But if you owe the bank, then you got to come up with that money and pay them, or they can take it from you. How does it alleviate risk? It allows you to diversify. So let's say I have that 100,000, and instead of one property I buy for 100,000, and this is ridiculous these days, but let's say it's 500,000. Instead of one property I buy for 500,000, I could put 100,000 down on 5 different properties, right? So that I'm diversified. Now, if one of them sits empty for 6 months, I still have 4 other properties out there making me money, right? So it doesn't hurt me as badly. So it allows you to diversify. There are reasons that people will leverage and not leverage. Leverage is always a great, well, let's get to that. Cash on cash return. Rate of return often used in real estate transactions. The calculation determines the cash income on the cash invested. When would we not use this as an overall rate of return? And that is when we have leverage. Does the use of leverage affect our cash on cash return? Does anybody know that? Yes or no? Does the use of leverage affect our cash on cash return? Yes, it does, John. Good job. Yes, it does affect our cash on cash return. Does it affect our cap rate? No, cap rates don't care where the money came from. Cap rates just care about the NOI divided by the price that you pay. Okay. So does the use of leverage affect our cash on cash return? Of course it does, because now we're putting in less. We're going to get to that in a second. Okay. This is where we get to Aunt Sally. Aunt Sally made it to Thanksgiving dinner this year. You told her you were selling real estate. You're an investment expert. Sally said she's been looking at a couple of investment properties on the internet and that she had learned quite a bit too. She had a property right here on her phone and she would love your opinion. Uh-oh, now you need to know what you're talking about, right? Aunt Sally's big find. Advertisement states the following: fourplex in the downtown area, asking price $359. Ad says seller is motivated. Gross rental income is, what do your investors love when they see that? Motivated, right? Gross rental income is 900 times 4 units times 12 months, 43.2 a year. Taxes, insurance are 3,600. You don't have to remember these. That's all the information we have. What do we tell Aunt Sally? Anybody know? Nothing yet. We learned Sally is in need of guidance, okay? We've learned that if Sally thinks that we can make a decision on that, then Sally doesn't, she needs some guidance. We've learned that we need to do some homework if we're going to help Aunt Sally. What's our homework? What else do we need to know? First, and most importantly, you need to know about your investor. That's why we have that investor questionnaire. We need to know about Sally, because what's a good deal for Sally might not be a good deal for me or for you. Okay. How much cash does Sally have? What is Sally's long-term goal? What are Sally's other investments? What would be her exit strategy? These are all things on the questionnaire. How does she feel about leveraging? Can Sally leverage? Can she borrow money? We need to know more about the property. Vacancy. Vacancy and delinquency risk must be calculated to anticipate real cash flow. These units are all identical and rent for $900 per month each. Is the market rent trending up or down? I don't know if I covered this in this one, but does it make a difference if this is, we know there are expenses involved with finding new tenants, right? You guys have placed tenants before and you get paid for it. Well, so does the listing agent. If you're the listing agent, so does the other agent, right? So there's expense if people don't renew. So if you're in the UCF or USF area, are you going to have a high turnover? Of course you are, right? Your students, they get done and they leave, or they trash the place and, you know, do keg stands and leave footprints on the ceiling and do all kinds of stuff, right? That's what they do, and you kick them out. Or they have 8 people living there, each paying $100 a month, right? So that's there's different turnover for downtown properties versus attraction area properties versus university property. Expenses. Get historical data to determine repairs and anticipate future repairs. Tenant turnover creates turn expenses. How long have the tenants been there? What do you, well, I guess I did cover this. Will the university area, tourist area, or downtown area have similar turnover? How to calculate NOI. Now this is net operating income, rent income, minus vacancy. We talked about this earlier. Minus vacancy losses, minus expenses equals your NOI. So let's look at this quad. This is our practice problem. Please have your calculators out. Purchase price of the fourplex is $325. So they wanted whatever I said, 375 or whatever, but they said that the price was negotiable. This is very important. Put in some different numbers that we can make work with it. If they want a certain return, if Sally says, I really like to make 10% on my money, right? That's what you hear a lot of people say. I'd love to make 10% on the money, because they figured out somehow that would be great. It's easy to figure out and they want to do it. So 10% is like a magical cap rate for residential. Now, when we talk about commercial investment, cap rates are lower. Okay. But they also have 30-year tenants that are Walgreens and stuff like that. So you'll see cap rates for 5.5% and stuff like that. Okay. Even lower, but they have a 30-year lease with a AAA accredited corporation. Okay. So not people that we're approving based on an application that could lose their job tomorrow. So it's a little bit higher risk. Residential leasing is a little bit higher risk than commercial leasing. Purchase price of the fourplex is $325. This is a number we plugged in because it said it was, I think we said they wanted $369, but seller's motivated or something like that. Buyer places 20% down or $65,000, financing $260,000. Okay. 30-year loan is at 6.5% with, I did this a couple years ago, guys, with principal and interest payment of $1,643. It's going to be higher now. It'll be about 8.5% right now. Maybe 8. $1,643 per month. Taxes, insurance at purchase are $3,600 a year, which we talked about earlier. The total payment of $1,943 per month. Okay, that's your print. That's what you're going to pay the bank every month. $1,943. Perform the calculations. 43.2. Payments are $23,316. Previous repair expenses as average $1,700 a year. Vacancy and credit loss $25.92. Owner spends about, and guys, these are made up, but the 6% typically is going to be pretty reasonable, usually between 5 and 10%. Owner spends about $400 each year in miscellaneous advertising costs and manages the property on their own. So every couple of years, the owner buys an $800 sign and puts out front, says vacancies or whatever, and then 2 years later, that thing is torn down. So, I mean, whatever it is that they spend $400 each year on, maybe they put on Zillow or they do whatever, right? So these are all things that you have to factor in. So a leveraged return on this, and that's what we're talking about here, because she put $65,000 down and borrowed the rest, right? 35,808 is your net operating income. Now that's, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but that's going to be the same for cash. Okay. I'm going to ask that question in a second, but you guys will know the answer. NOI does not matter. Nothing up in those numbers. I'm pointing at my screen. That's not helping you guys. Nothing in those numbers have anything to do with whether she leveraged or not. Okay. So 35,808 is the net operating income of this building. Doesn't matter what she pays for it. Doesn't matter how she pays for it. That's what the net operating income is, no matter who buys this building. Her debt service with her rate that she's getting and the amount that she borrowed is 23,316. So 15,192 annual cash flow. How do we determine her rate of return? How do we determine her rate of return? How much money did she put in? What's her cash on cash return? Let's do her cash on cash return. How much money did she put in cash? Anybody remember? 65,000. Okay. How do I determine what her cash on cash return is? Somebody unmute and tell me. If I put in 65,000 to something and every year I get 15,192 back. Yes, John. Can you unmute? Bottom left of those things at the bottom.
You know, if she's put in 65,000, divide that by the expenses, and she's almost near 50. She's a little under 50%.
Well, you
cash? Am I doing
divide the 15,192 cash flow by the cash that she put in.
All right, so she's just under 25%.
Yep, 23%. So it's like 23.2 or something. Yes, 23% return on this. Is that a good cash on cash return? Would you advise that she buy it for 325? You would. If she's comfortable leveraging, if ever this stuff that we talked about was right, absolutely. I mean, that's a good cash on cash return. Sounds great, right? But is it? Let's compare it to a cash return if she did not borrow money, if she had $325,000 to buy this. Is there any change to taxes or insurance if she pays cash? Does that affect her taxes or insurance? Does the government or the insurance company care if you pay? No. Is there any change to vacancies or repairs? Could I, well, let me go back to this first question. Could I have a property that I don't have insurance on if I pay cash? You could. Could I have, can I do that if I'm borrowing money? No, right? That's going to be a problem. So should I have a property I don't have insurance on? Absolutely not. Always tell them to get insurance, keep up with their insurance, etc. If you guys want to work with this investor again, keep up with their stuff and keep them doing insurance. That's a good reason to contact them. Hey, just want to check with you on insurance on that building. Have your rates changed at all? Oh, no, I'm glad you said something. They just sent me a renewal note, you know, whatever. You guys know they're going to have to renew every year. That's a good reason to check up on somebody. How's that building doing? You know, is there any changes you want to get rid of that building or want to add something to it? You know, Aunt Sally here is killing it on the money that she borrowed. Maybe she wants to, you know, she's got another 65 sitting around somewhere. She wants to buy another building. So it's a good reason to check up with these people, increase your business, and help their portfolio. All right. Is there any change to debt service if they pay cash? Any change to their debt service? Of course, they don't have any, right? How does it affect their return? Return using cash, all these numbers are exactly the same like we talked about before. It should be 34,908. What's my cash on cash return? $34,908, but guys, she paid cash, not 65,000 anymore. She paid 325 cash. You'll get to where you can look at these and tell ballpark where it's going to be. If I put $325,000 and gave that to you and you gave me back $35,000 every year, what would that come out to? Gigi, that's really close. It's 10 something. I know that. 10.74. Good job. Yes, 10.74%. Is that a good cash on cash return? It's yes, absolutely. It's a good cash on cash return. So, well, all this was based on what though? All this was based on the seller selling it for 325 and not 369. So do these. So what you'll do is that 325, those last two things that we did is you'll raise her 65,000 to, if she has to pay 375, maybe she has to put in 70,000 now instead of 65,000. So you'll do based on that. And if she has to pay 375 cash, then you would do that 34,908 divided by 375. So it's going to be a little under 10%, right? Still a good return, but it's a lot better if she pays less. But you'll run a couple of numbers, say, look, if we get it for 325, it's this. If we get it for 350, this. If we get it for 375, this. And just give her those scenarios, okay? Do not, this is so important, guys, do not assume your clients have the same mindset or values that you do. If you go down to the Ferrari dealership this afternoon, which I'm sure a lot of you will because it's Valentine's Day, you got to do something nice. So if you go down to the Ferrari dealership, do you think everybody selling Ferraris there at the dealership drives a Ferrari? Probably not, right? Could they sell a Ferrari if they have the mindset that Ferraris are a ripoff? They're too expensive, they're wasting money, they're hurting the environment, they're this, they're that, and it's against their morals and standards and just offends them as a person that people drive Ferraris. Could I sell Ferraris like that? Probably not. I don't put my mindset, my values on other people. I can't do that, right? I might think, some of you guys, like, you know, you guys on camera all young and spry, and you might think that every investor should leverage themselves to the hilt. Why not? Look at all this extra return they get. They only put 65,000. They could buy 5 of these buildings for that 325. They could buy exactly 5 of these buildings for that 325 if they did it that way, right? So why wouldn't they want to make all that extra money? Well, not everybody has the same values you do. People are ready to retire. They're this or that. That's all they want to do. They don't want the stress. They don't want to manage 5 properties or deal with 5 properties, right? So I mean, that's 4 tenants in that one property. They want to deal with 5 of them. You know what I mean? So not everybody has the same thing, and it might be the opposite. You guys might be, let's play it safe and all this stuff, and your investors, you know, 30 years old. You know, they're ready to roll the dice a little bit. They're trying to build a big portfolio eventually, and they want to start however they're going to start. So do not assume your clients have the same mindset or values you do. I can't afford a yacht, guys, but I could sure sell one because I think they're great, but I can't afford one. So I could see why people do like them. Active versus passive investments. Is managing property something your investor wants to do on a daily basis? An active investor manages the properties herself. A passive investor hires a management company. What is involved in managing a property? This is a rhetorical question. I'm going to go through these. Tenant screening and placement, property maintenance, rent collection and remittance, inspections, repairs, cleaning, lease renewals, evictions. I can't go backwards. So I think it's important to tell you guys also that it is very, very important how you place notices and all the laws and rules and stuff that you have to do. Good luck evicting a tenant if you're not placing the notices properly on the right days and in the right place and getting the right procedures done, because evictions become nightmares if you don't do that stuff. And the law very much favors tenants, and you know, missing a day or two, a deadline here and there can set you back, you know, 30 days, 60 days, something like that. So just keep all that stuff in mind. They do not miss a payment and the sheriff comes the next day. That's not how that works. It's a big process and you have to do things the right way. So let's go to the questionnaire. I'm going to take you to the questionnaire. Did you guys go over the questionnaire? Do you have any questions on the questionnaire before we start? Let me know you guys can see it again. Here it comes. Okay. I can see it now. All right, you everybody see it? Okay. Investor questionnaire. What is your real estate investment goal? And all these terms you're going to see on here, we just talked about, except for exit strategies in the next one. What's your real estate investment goal? You know, maybe they just want, this is going to help you understand them so much better. What's your investment goal of this? I just want to make the most money on this 100,000 or 500,000 or whatever I have. I just want to make the most money possible on this. Tell me about your portfolio. We're going to get into all this stuff later, and they're going to answer some of these questions up top. I don't want to, they might say, I don't want to borrow money. I don't want to do whatever. Or they're going to say, I absolutely want to make the most money I can. And we'll talk about strategies after that. Tell me about your portfolio, properties, what properties you own, what kind of rates of return they're getting now, what are your exit strategies of those, right? What kind of properties would you like to acquire and why? What is your required rate of return of your next investment? That's where we start talking about that. I like to make 10%. How long, maybe it's 8%, maybe it's, some of them say 20. So it's always something to talk about. How long do you plan to keep it in your portfolio? Again, we're getting back to the exit strategy. Maybe they want to own, how many of them have started with, I'd like to get like a house or two, just kind of start building something. And then eventually I'd like to own like an apartment complex, right? Like a 20-unit building or a 10-unit, something multifamily. How long do you plan to keep? When would you like to acquire the property? This will kind of tell you a little bit about wasting time too, and we'll get you set some timelines for them. And it's something to use later and say, if you send them a bunch of properties, they're not responding, say, look, if we want to hit your goal by having 2 properties by the end of this year, we're going to need to get moving, right? Are you looking to invest strictly cash, or are you going to use leverage? This is where we start talking about that. If leveraging, how much can you borrow? What are you pre-approved for? Oh, you're not pre-approved? Let's go talk to somebody, okay? Do you plan to manage the property by yourself, or is it a passive investment? Most of them have jobs, and they might think they can manage it themselves. And of course, if they want to, you let them try, but kind of keep them, okay, well, we have a management company if you need something. Are you purchasing in your own name or using organization? Just kind of set them up on this. We are not tax professionals. We don't give advice on this stuff. You can tell them what you've seen before, but you may have heard this, may have heard that, and then say, but you need to talk to a professional, okay? Either a legal or accounting professional. Have you spoken with the tax, oh, here we go, legal professional regarding the benefit drawbacks of using an organization? So you're kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts here. We're getting closer to how we're actually going to do it. So we'll kind of go through a why, and then a what, and then a how. How are we going to buy this? What are we going to do with it? Okay. So this will help weed out people who are not serious or not ready. And that's okay if they're not ready. But if they're not serious, that's not really okay. You only have resources of time and gas. You can't be, running around and wasting a lot of time with people. So that's it. You guys have any questions on that? Wilmeth.
Yeah, Ryan, as a realtor, so what would be your advice for an investor who has like a $400,000?
That's a great question. So and a lot of it, and again, like I just went over here, I can't answer that question without knowing a lot more about them, of course. But let's say all things are equal, they don't mind borrowing money, okay? Or they do, let's say either way. All right, let's talk about $500,000 because it's easier for me to talk about with math and everything else. So guys, how easy is it to, someone owns a $500,000 house. What would they need to rent it for reasonably? What do they want to rent it for? When you think of a $500,000 house, you think what you could rent it for. What do you think? $3,000? Something like that, $3,200, $3,500 maybe. Hopefully more, but that's probably, you're in that area somewhere, right? I mean, it depends on where it is and how many bedrooms, all that stuff. But roughly, let's just say that. What do we call someone who can afford $3,500 a month and has good credit? A homeowner, right? That's what we call a homeowner. Some people are saying that's nobody, but that person already owns a home. It's hard to find renters that have decent credit and all the stuff that your owner is going to want in their $500,000 home. They're going to want people with job histories and good credit and all this stuff, right? I personally would rather own $550,000 condos that I leverage. Okay, I'd rather or $250,000 condos at that money I could leverage with that $500,000. Okay, I'm going to have debt service on that, but I'm going to have 5 people paying $1,800 a month rent. Okay, I'm going to have if one of them sits empty, I'm not hurting. Okay, so that's what I would rather diversify and have more properties that I have less money in each one. That's me. That's my personal one. If your client would rather just buy 2, let's say they have $400,000. There are condos out there for condos. There are not many houses out there right now, but there might be some for $200,000. Then buy 2 of them rather than one $400,000. I'm going back to $400,000 because that was his question. Rather than one $400,000 house, I'd rather put $100,000 down on 4 houses. of a reasonable value, $300,000, $350 for $100,000 on each one. If you put 25% down, they could buy four $400,000 houses, and those things will rent for $2,500, $2,800, whatever, all day. Okay, $2,500 a lot easier to get than $3,500. A lot more people out there who can pay $2,500 but can't buy a house or not ready to buy a house or whatever the situation is. But I'd rather have people paying $1,800 with decent credit who just can't buy a house, that can't come up with 10 grand to put down, 20 grand to put down. The same people you guys are out there working with, good people, just don't have a lot of money, for your residential stuff. Good people just don't have a lot of money put down and they have to rent. You guys ever run into somebody like that? You all have, right? So you struggle to try to find them some kind of way to come up with a down payment and a gift from somebody and scratch together stuff. And you guys have done deals like that. And maybe these people just need to rent for a while. But that's what I would do. It's a lot easier and it's a lot more fruitful to split that money up, even if you don't borrow, even if you just put it into two $200,000 homes. Okay. That's what I would direct someone to do under most circumstances, unless there's some reason, I don't know your client, unless there's some reason they cannot or will not want to do that. But if they just want to own a nice $400,000 house and rent it out, they can do that. But again, you got to look at what the return's going to be. Does that answer your question, Wilma?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. If you need help with that, if you have questions about it, text me. Or no, don't text me, email me.
Thank you.
You bet, buddy. Any other questions? You guys get anything out of this? You have everybody understands it all? Yes, John.
I guess for everybody in the class, if like in my situation, I'm working with someone that's got vacant land and it's rated at multifamily. The old rating was 12 units. And if that 1 acre got built 12 units for, let's say, $1.5 million and $200,000 in impact fees, I guess my valuation on this is I'm going to look at all that that build out cost of $1.7 million, and then use the rental income less property taxes and insurance to figure out a cap rate, something like that, right? It's still just a basic model, no matter which way you got to apply it.
Okay, so that's a great question, John. So I want to tell my client what that acre is. Where there's 1 acre. I can build up to 12. Let's assume I can get 12. With engineering and runoff and all that kind of stuff, roads and retention and everything else, parking. Let's assume I can get 12 there. Okay, which isn't always the case, as you know. So let's assume I can get 12, and I know that first thing I have to do is find out what the market rates. I got to work backwards on this. I got to find out what the market rates are, right? What could I rent? Are these 2 1s or 1 1s or whatever they are, right? Doesn't matter. You don't have to answer that.
It would be a mix,
Right. Well, that's a rhetorical question. So what are my 2 1s? Let's say we do a mix of half and half, 2 1s and 1 1s, or 2 2s and 1 1s, or whatever it is, right? We figure that out. Or we do different scenarios. That's kind of what we need to do. And say, if I can build 12 2 2s there, it's going to be worth a lot more than if I build 12 1 1s, right? So because the rent's going to be higher. So I got to figure out what the rents are, and then I know what my NOI will be, right? So I figure out my NOI, and I work backwards from that to find out if I want a decent cap rate. If my investor wants to do all this stuff and make 10%, what can they pay for? And then I got back out the construction. What can their total amount be that they're going to have in this, right? That's the one thing I would do. Let's say they can have 3 million total in it. So I work out the 1.7 for building these 12 units. I work out the impact fees. I work out the horizontal construction, putting in the roads and parking and all that stuff. I work out, then I come up with a number I can pay for this land, and maybe it's only 700,000, right? Or maybe it works. And then I got to figure out, we're not just going in and buying a building that already exists. Now I've got to figure out, and I wanted to get to something anyway. I'm glad you asked that question. Now I got to figure out the risk of doing all this construction and everything else, and the time, there's a time value of money too. And this is going to tie up my 700,000 plus all of my draws for my construction and all that stuff for the next 2 years. That's eating away at my return as well. So what, time value of money is a lot. You know that, you guys know how that works. If I have to sit out a year not getting any return, that's crushing my time value of money, right? It's crushing my return based on that. But good news is, what's the good news about a brand new building? The good news about a brand new building is I don't have to put a new roof on it for a while. I don't have to put new ACs in it for a while. When we talk about this construction cost and all this stuff and what it's going to be, 1.7 million or whatever it is, the number you throw out. If I've got to look at the 1.7, at least I've got brand new roofs. I don't have to mess with that for a while. I've got brand new ACs. I've got all that stuff. And that brought me to what I wanted to talk about too, was when you guys see a listing for an investment property and it's got brand new roofs and ACs and stuff like that, isn't that great? Because you also have to figure out, when you're looking at these properties for Aunt Sally, another thing we needed to do was see what kind of, obviously we had to do inspections and all that, see what kind of shape is the roof in? How old are the ACs? What if it's got a 13-year-old roof and 9-year-old ACs, right? That's going to be a problem for Aunt Sally. She's going to have to do something. And so that needs to be worked into the numbers as well. Okay. So that was on there, but it wasn't really clear. So one of the things I like to talk about is HOAs. It's condo owner associations, HOAs. You guys, your investors hate these things. Oh my gosh, we rent this for $1,800 a month, but I've got $350 condo owner fee every month. Well, guess what? With that $350, you're not going to have to ever put a new roof on it. You're not ever going to have to paint it. There's good things that come from that as well. The reserve. So what we call reserves is when, like, your HOA does it, your condo owner association does it. They have a reserve fund, and that is for every 12 years, 15 years, they have to put a new roof on the place, right? Or every 7 to 10 years, they're supposed to paint it. So that's money that they put aside, they charge you for, and they put aside for when they need that. Okay. So our condo owner associations and homeowners, they're not always bad. They're not always bad. In fact, it forces owners to do what they normally wouldn't do. They normally would just spend all the money they get or put it into another building or whatever. And then when it needs a new roof, right? So that's learn how to deal with those questions as well. And those questions are the condo association. Yeah, I'm sure some of it is, some of it's to make it pretty, and some of it's keep a guard gate or private streets and all that kind of stuff, which helps our rent. Okay, would you think a condo goes for more if it's sitting out on Colonial Drive, or do you think it goes more if it's in a gated subdivision? Right, so it goes for more money, and it has reserve. If it's a condo or townhouse or something like that, it has reserves. And I live in a townhouse. I'll never have to put a new roof on here, right? I'll never have to paint the outside. I don't even have to do the yard, so there you go. So some things there's good and bad to those associations as well, and just be knowledgeable enough to point that out. Some of them includes cable and water and sewer and all the other things that people won't have to pay. What good does that do? Well, that's more that the tenant can pay for rent, but it needs to be obviously advertised properly. If you guys advertise rental properties, you've done that before. You've said, hey, we can charge a little bit more because all this stuff is included. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for that question, John. That was great. I know I went off on a tangent there, but hopefully I covered that question. You just back all those numbers out for the construction and everything else. There's a lot of, and the reason I said there's more the risk with building, there's a lot of those numbers that we have for that. We've heard of change orders before, right? You don't get change orders when you buy an existing building. Okay. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. We have a special presentation in 2 weeks on the 28th. I think it's going to be a lunch and learn live at our headquarters in Orlando, but it'll also be on Zoom. And then it won't be, not lunch, it'll be late brunch, 10:30. And I will see you guys next week, though, on the 21st. I hope you guys all have a great Valentine's Day. Have a great real estate day. If you have any questions with investors, please use this questionnaire. It is on Paperless Pipeline under the reference tab. I think it's office documents or something like that. You'll find it on there, but it's just FRI investor questionnaire. If you have any other questions, guys, feel free to reach out. See you guys. Have a great week.